Have you ever been playing a simple card game like Splendor and thought to yourself, what this game really needs is a branching storyline? Well then, have I got a game review for you. And this also happens to be my very first review on this channel. So if you're just dropping in for this review and this is your first time here, my name is Aaron, and this is Treehane Miniatures, where we strive to paint eye-catching tabletop miniatures while striking a balance between quality of output and time invested. So with that little introduction out of the way, let's get to my review of Witcher: Path of Destiny, and welcome to Treehane Miniatures. No disclaimers are necessary here. This is a review of a game that I purchased with my own money, and I have no affiliation with Go On Board or any other board game company. In fact, The Witcher: Path of Destiny was the first crowdfunding campaign that I backed after a 2-year hiatus from crowdfunding. And I did so thinking that it would be nice to have these cool little miniatures to paint for my channel. I was also drawn to the theme, and I really like the Eurocentric card play mechanic that is present in this game. What you're getting with this review is my honest, unadulterated opinion of this game. The Witcher: Path of Destiny is a card drafting, hand management, tableau building card game. There are some other aspects to the game, such as one-time use asymmetric player abilities, and some minor tweaks to the gameplay introduced with each of the tales, but card play is really what's at the heart of this board game experience. This is a simple card game through and through. The Witcher: Path of Destiny is a straightforward card game with minimal rules or complications. As such, every aspect of this game feels incredibly streamlined, and the setup is no exception. You simply choose a tale which consists of a single deck of cards that are placed on the game mat without shuffling. You shuffle one set of action cards, which are what the players will draft and add to their tableaus. And you put out the symbol tokens. All of these tokens are contained in a single compartmentalized token tray with a lid, which is much appreciated. More games should include this as standard. This game easily sets up in about 2 minutes, which is a huge perk for getting it played more often. Player components are even easier to set up. Place a couple of markers on the player board, one on the scoring track and one on the turn order track, and you're good to go. That's right, I said turn order track, because that is all that these miniatures are used for, turn order. But we'll get more into that later. Learning and teaching this game is a breeze. Now, I'm not even remotely going to try to teach you everything you need to know to play this game, but I would like to discuss how it plays. The rules are very well organized, and I didn't run across any rules ambiguities. Everything is clearly explained in the rulebook. I had no issues teaching the game either. It only takes about 5 minutes to teach this game to new players, maybe 10 if you have slow learners, or if you're a slow teacher. The game is played over 3 rounds, which are referred to as chapters, and each chapter consists of 3 turns. You heard me correctly, there are only 9 turns in an entire game of The Witcher: Path of Destiny, so you'll want to make the most of them. On their turn, each of the players does basically just 2 things. First, in turn order, players draft a pair of cards from the main board. Then players simultaneously play 2 cards from their hand and activate any abilities. That's it. The third part of each turn is to assign the Destiny token to the symbol on the tail card that more players have the majority in. This is essentially what will determine which of the 2 paths the story will take. At the end of 3 turns, the chapter concludes and the players score victory points and experience points based on the active symbols that they've collected, and the next chapter begins. This game flows so smoothly. A 2-player game can wrap up in about 30 minutes, and our 4-player sessions lasted only about 45 minutes to an hour. The main slowdown in this game comes from the card drafting step of each turn. Not only are you trying to collect the active symbols that are printed on the top left of the cards, but the cards also have effects that resolve when played. These usually have requirements that need to be met or costs that need to be paid from the other cards in your tableau. Working out which cards to draft that will synergize well with the other cards in your hand and tableau can be a sticking point for some players, slowing down the game. Also, the row from where cards are drafted will determine the player order for the next round. Sometimes it's beneficial to prioritize future turn order over the effects on the current set of cards, which adds another layer to the decision space of the card draft. However, even with AP-prone players, the downtime never feels excessive. After all players have drafted their cards, players simultaneously and secretly choose which 2 cards they want to play from their hand to their tableau. In case I haven't mentioned it yet, the tableau is referred to as the player's timeline in this game. Once players have chosen their 2 cards, all players simultaneously play the chosen cards to their timelines and resolve any effects printed on the cards. Because 2 of these 3 actions are done simultaneously, the overall time to play this game is not radically impacted by player count. The only area where extra players will have an impact on the overall time for this game is during the draft step, but this can be minimal if you're playing with fast players. The players' turn order markers are then placed back on the turn order track based on their current placement from the card draft, and the card market gets refreshed. This process is repeated 2 more times and then the chapter ends. Players gain victory points for the number of dominant active symbols that they have in their timelines, and they receive experience points for the number of non-dominant active symbols that they have in their timelines. Then the player with the most dominant active symbols and the player with the most non-dominant active symbols will receive some sort of benefit. Typically, the player with the most dominant symbols will receive a greater benefit, and the player with the most non-dominant symbols will receive a lesser benefit, but this isn't always the case. After playing 3 chapters, the game ends. I feel that the story element of this game has been played up a little too much. For me, there's a complete disconnect between the gameplay element and the story element of this game. At no point during the game do I ever feel like the card play decisions that I'm making are what's driving this story forward. When playing cards, I'm focused solely on optimizing my tableau to score the most points at the end of the chapter. The path the story takes is really just a side effect of the symbols that players have collected in order to score points. Also, much has been said about the 8 possible endings for each of these 3 tales, providing gamers with 24 unique gameplay experiences in the core box. No. Well, technically yes, but no. You see, each of the tales technically has 3 endings, but each tale only has 1 possible Chapter 1 and only 2 possible Chapter 2s. Are you really willing to read Chapter 1 8 times and Chapter 2 4 times each just to get to each of those 8 endings? I know I'm not. I've played this game 7 times, I've played each tale at least twice, and I'm already done with the story. This is not to say that the tales have no place here. The indispensable aspect of each tale is that it adds what can best be described as a mini expansion module to the game. These little modules provide players with another goal to focus on, slightly changing up the feel of the game. These modules usually have you meeting some sort of requirement in order to receive a benefit, such as an immediate benefit, end of chapter benefit, or endgame scoring opportunities. That being said, this game does feel like a love letter to Witcher fans. It feels like a fun little card game with some Witcher-themed flavor text thrown in between the rounds. I think this is a good thing. Although these tales are pretty limited in scope, there is enough fan service within these well-crafted tales to please hardcore fans, as long as they enter the experience with the right set of expectations. Discussing the components for The Witcher Path of Destiny are where things get a little bit sticky, even though most of the components are of excellent quality. The cards have a very light linen finish and are fairly thin, but they shuffle quite nicely and retain their shape well. I actually prefer thin cards with a linen finish rather than thicker cards. I also like the watercolor art, and the iconography is clear and very easy to grasp. The neoprene mat is a standout feature for a game like this. I really hate drafting cards off cardboard surfaces, and I always upgrade to neoprene when I have the option. Neoprene mats make lifting the cards off the surface easier, and it prevents damaging the edges of the cards. I like the feel of naked cards, so I prefer neoprene over sleeving to protect my cards. The plastic storage trays with lids are also a huge plus in my book. As stated earlier, this helps immensely in getting the game on the table and set up quickly. Since all of the components for this game are of a consistently good quality, the previously mentioned sticking point comes into play when discussing the difference in components between the deluxe version and the retail version. The most conspicuous difference between the productions is the inclusion of miniatures in the deluxe version. These are completely unnecessary. There is no feeling that these characters are interacting with the story in any way, nor is there any real feeling of character progression. The miniatures are nothing more than turn order trackers, and could have easily been replaced by colored pawns. I don't think that the standees are any better, but that's because I don't really like the tactile feel of moving around upright cardboard chits. I think that the most appropriate thing that the publisher could have used for a game like this would have been custom-shaped wooden meeples. This really comes down to personal preference though, but I give a nod to the retail version here. The character scoring miniatures, on the other hand, are completely unusable. They aren't stackable, and the base of each scoring miniature is larger than the score track locations, making it nigh impossible for 2 score markers to share the same space, let alone 5 score markers. The erratic layout of the score track also makes it impossible to even line up the markers next to each other when sharing the same scoring location. Seems like a silly design decision. Stackable plastic scoring markers like you see in something like Ethnos would have been a much better choice for the deluxe version. Another win for the retail edition. The 3 tuck boxes for the tails are nice, but the tails are just as easily stored in plastic bags. Finally, and most impactful, are the dual layer player boards. These are nice, and a quality of life improvement that I'm glad to have. And this is an overwhelming win for the deluxe version of the game in my opinion. The dilemma comes down to a cost-benefit analysis that I cannot answer for you. The difference in MSRP between the 2 versions of the game is $30. You can always upgrade your retail boards with acrylic overlays, but the cost of 5 similar acrylic overlays on Etsy is about $25 plus shipping, which would bring the cost for the retail version up to the same price point as the deluxe version. So really, the only question when deciding which version of the game is right for you is how important are dual layer boards to you. If they're a must-have item, then I think you're probably better off going with the deluxe version of the game. As far as the solo mode goes, I'm not really a solo board gamer, but I did check it out for this review. I found that the solo mode plays smoothly with minimal upkeep or overhead. The AI player simply flips a coin at the beginning of each chapter to give it a boost to its symbol count, and then it drafts cards predictably on each of its turns. That's it. Ultimately, the solo mode feels remarkably like the 2-player game, and I enjoyed it for what it is. I honestly went into this game with some pretty low expectations, especially after reading through the rulebook. But I was pleasantly surprised with the overall game experience. Yes, the gameplay loop is incredibly simple, but there are meaningful decisions to be made on each turn, sometimes even bogging down the flow of the game as you try to optimize the best card to play from your hand. And I mean this in a good way. The game design can best be described as elegant. There's a small rule set coupled with meaningful decisions that keep you engaged throughout. And I don't want to build the game up too much. Expectations are everything. If you go into this game knowing that you're going to play a fun, light little card game with some Witcher themes sprinkled throughout, then you're in for a good time. The biggest endorsement that I can give this game is that I'm not done with it yet. After 7 plays, I still want to keep playing it. Now, I'm going to come in at a 3 out of 5 for this game, which for me means that this is a solidly designed game that I enjoy playing. It's not exceptional, but it's solid enough that I'm going to continue to enjoy playing it until the next exceptional card game comes out. And that's my review for The Witcher: Path of Destiny. If you like this review, please let me know in the comments down below. If you have any suggestions or critiques for how I can improve the flow or format of these reviews, also let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to join our growing community of gamers.